There's a specific kind of silence that only an ignored child understands. It's not loud, not violent, not even visible, but it lingers like a shadow that follows you into adulthood, whispering a single, painful question: was I ever worth noticing? You learn early on that your voice doesn't echo back, that your laughter doesn't turn heads, that your tears can fall quietly, unnoticed, like rain in a desert no one visits. And over time, something inside you begins to shift, not suddenly, but slowly, like emotional erosion. Piece by piece, you start disappearing from your own life. Because being ignored isn't just about absence. It's about what that absence teaches you. It teaches you that love must be earned, not given. That attention is a reward, not a right. That your needs are interruptions. And eventually, that your existence is optional. The ignored child doesn't grow up feeling angry at first. They grow up confused. Watching other children receive warmth so effortlessly, they begin to wonder what invisible rule they broke. What silent flaw they carry. It's like standing behind a glass wall, able to see connection, but never quite able to step into it. Psychologists sometimes refer to this as micro-trauma. Small, repeated emotional wounds that seem insignificant on their own, but over time, carve deep patterns into the psyche. Not being listened to when you spoke. Not being comforted when you cried. Not being acknowledged when you tried. None of these moments scream trauma, but together, they form an emotional language your brain learns to speak fluently. I don't matter. And the most dangerous part is, you don't even realize you've learned it. Instead, you adapt. You become quieter, easier, less demanding. You shrink your needs so they fit into the smallest corners of other people's lives. You become hyper-aware of moods, reading the room like a survival skill. Because maybe, just maybe, if you say the right thing at the right time, someone will finally notice you. This is where the invisible child is born, not physically unseen, but emotionally unregistered. And invisibility becomes your identity. You stop asking for help because experience has taught you it won't come. You stop expressing emotions because no one has shown you how to hold them. You stop expecting love because expecting it only leads to quiet disappointment. It's not that you don't feel deeply, it's that you've learned to feel alone. There's a concept called ambiguous loss, a type of grief that has no clear ending, no funeral, no closure. It's the pain of missing something that was never fully there to begin with. And for the ignored child, this loss is constant. You're grieving a connection that should have existed, but didn't. You're mourning a version of childhood you can see others have, but can never fully claim as your own. So instead of processing that grief, you internalize it. You turn it inward and ask, maybe I'm too much. Maybe I'm not enough. Maybe, if I become better, quieter, smarter, they'll finally see me. And this is where the cycle deepens. Because the ignored child doesn't just grow up wanting attention, they grow up chasing validation. Not the loud, obvious kind, but the subtle kind. The kind that comes from being useful, from being perfect, from being needed. You become the person who anticipates everyone else's needs before your own. The one who listens more than they speak. The one who gives endlessly, hoping that one day, someone will give back without being asked. But here's the quiet tragedy. Even when someone finally does notice you, it feels unfamiliar, uncomfortable, almost suspicious, because your nervous system isn't wired for consistent attention, it's wired for absence. So when care appears, you question it. When someone listens, you minimize your words. When someone values you, you downplay your worth. It's like being handed something you've always wanted, but never learned how to hold. And beneath all of this lies a deeper wound, not just the absence of attention, but the absence of mirroring. As children, we learn who we are by how others respond to us. When a parent smiles back, we learn we are joyful. When they comfort us, we learn we are worthy of care. When they listen, we learn our voice matters. But when those responses are missing, you grow up without a clear reflection of yourself. You don't fully know what you feel, what you need, or even who you are, because no one ever consistently reflected it back to you. Your identity becomes fragmented, shaped more by adaptation than authenticity. You become who you think will be accepted, rather than who you truly are. And over time, this creates a quiet but powerful fear, the fear that if you were fully seen, you might still be ignored. So you stay hidden. Not because you want to, but because it feels safer than being invisible again. This is the paradox of the ignored child. They crave connection more than anything, yet they've learned to survive without it. They want to be understood, yet struggle to express themselves. They long to be chosen, yet feel undeserving of being chosen at all. And this conflict doesn't just disappear with age. It follows you into friendships where you give and receive, into relationships where you settle for emotional crumbs, into moments where you silence yourself, even when your heart is screaming to be heard. Because deep down, there's still that child waiting quietly in the background, hoping that this time, someone will notice. And the hardest part, sometimes even you don't notice yourself. You dismiss your own feelings. You ignore your own needs. You invalidate your own pain, because that's what you were taught. It's like carrying an empty well inside you, constantly hoping others will fill it, without realizing you were never taught how to draw water for yourself. And so the question slowly begins to shift, not just, why did they ignore me? But something far more unsettling. What did I have to become, just to survive being unseen? What did I have to become, just to survive being unseen? Maybe you became the version of yourself that never asks for too much. The one who apologizes for existing a little too loudly. The one who learned to read silence better than words. And while that version protected you once, it also came with a cost. Because when you spend years minimizing yourself, you don't just hide from others, you slowly hide from your own life. You hesitate before speaking, even when your thoughts are valid. You overthink small interactions, searching for signs of rejection that may not even exist. You feel a quiet exhaustion from always being fine, even when you're not. And perhaps the most painful consequence is that you become incredibly good at loving people who cannot love you back in the same way. Not because you want to suffer, but because it feels familiar. Your nervous system recognizes inconsistency as normal. It confuses emotional distance with safety, so you might find yourself drawn to people who are unavailable, distant, or just out of reach, repeating a pattern that once hurt you, hoping this time it will end differently, but it rarely does. And each time it repeats, it reinforces that old belief that being unseen is simply your role in the story. Yet here's the truth that often goes unnoticed. You were never too much. You were simply too unseen in places that lack the capacity to see you. There is a difference, because a child does not become invisible on their own. They are made invisible in environments where attention is scarce, where emotions are inconvenient, where presence is inconsistent. So what you learned was not a flaw in you, it was a strategy. A quiet, intelligent adaptation to an emotional environment that could not hold you. And when you begin to see it this way, something starts to shift. Instead of asking, "What's wrong with me?" you begin to ask, "What happened to me?" That single shift changes everything. Because it replaces shame with understanding. It replaces self-blame with compassion. You start to realize that your silence was not weakness, it was protection. Your hyper-awareness was not anxiety, it was survival. Your independence was not strength alone, it was necessity. And slowly, you begin to loosen the identity of the invisible child. Not all at once, but in small, almost unnoticeable ways. You start by listening to yourself, even when no one else is. You acknowledge your feelings without immediately dismissing them. You allow your needs to exist without apologizing for them. At first, it feels unfamiliar, even uncomfortable, because for so long, your worth was tied to how little space you took. Now, you're learning to take up space gently. You might practice saying what you feel, even if your voice shakes. You might choose people who consistently show up rather than those who make you chase. You might begin to notice when you're shrinking and consciously choose not to These are small acts, but they are deeply radical for someone who grew up unseen. And perhaps the most important part of healing is this: learning to notice yourself, to become the witness you never had. To sit with your emotions instead of abandoning them. To validate your own experience without needing external permission. Because the truth is, the attention you were searching for outside was always a reflection of something deeper. The need to feel real. To feel valued. To feel like you exist in a way that matters. And that is something you can begin to give yourself. Not perfectly. Not all at once. But gradually. Like filling that empty well, one drop at a time. There will still be moments where the old patterns return. Moments where you feel invisible again, even in a crowded room. Moments where you question your worth in the silence of others. But this time, something will be different. You will notice it. And instead of disappearing into that feeling, you will sit beside it. You will remind yourself, this is familiar, but it is not who I am anymore. Because you are no longer that child waiting to be seen. You are the one who can finally turn toward yourself and say, I see you. And maybe that's where healing truly begins. Not in being noticed by everyone, but in no longer abandoning yourself when no one else notices. So, if you've spent your life feeling invisible, if you've ever questioned your worth, because no one seemed to look your way, understand this. Your value was never dependent on their attention. Your voice was never defined by their silence. And your existence was never meant to be small. You were always here, always real, always worthy of being seen, even when no one showed you how, and now you get to learn it in your own way. Slowly, gently, honestly, because the story of the ignored child does not end in invisibility. It ends in recognition. The kind that doesn't come from the outside, but rises quietly from within. And if this story felt like it was speaking directly to something you've carried for a long time, then maybe, just maybe, you're not as alone as you thought. Someone, somewhere, understands this silence, and perhaps for the first time. So do you.